comes from beyond time, from beyond the outer limits of your imagination, and he's ready to blow your mind.
Amnesia is one of those games that's the perfect litmus test to find out whether or not people remember old school Let's Plays, because this was the game that, in its peak, was as popular as Five Nights at Freddy's when it first came out. It's a relic of the past that saw the success of many YouTubers, including PewDiePie, who at one point played this game exclusively on his channel.
Oh, it's open now? Oh good. Ooh, look at this Iron Maiden. I don't trust Iron Maidens. You go first, Stefano. Is it good? Yeah, it's good. I'm just in this guy's crotch, so I don't know.
This birthed PewDiePie's career and launched it into new heights, where he continued to soar for many years. If you don't remember Stefano or the barrel, bro, are you even a PewDiePie fan? Honestly. But let's not get too far off track here. This video is dedicated to the master of psychological horror itself, Amnesia, The Dark Descent, and the amazing people behind the game itself, Frictional Games. Starting off with their very first series ever, Penumbra, Frictional Games made it clear there's one genre they want to focus on and to master: psychological horror. Some might say the Penumbra, and for that matter every game made by Frictional Games, is in fact a survival horror game, but I argue that survival horrors are more focused on you versus the monsters with limited supplies. Good examples would be games like Resident Evil or Silent Hill. I don't know, Dead Space is a good one. These games give you the tools to survive: weapons, health packs, abilities, maybe a radio, but it doesn't give the winning advantage to you, just enough supplies to make sure you can move forward. The kinds of games Frictional made were less you versus monsters and more you versus yourself. Sure, there are monsters, but they're easily avoidable and often not really the scariest part of their games. What you need more than anything is patience and a good hiding spot, and well, when you find both, the monsters just sort of become trivial. See, the true horror in Frictional Games' games have always been with the player themselves. Starting with Penumbra, there technically isn't any NPCs whatsoever in this game, not physically anyways. Sure, there's quite a few people you meet in the trilogy and ultimately talk to, but it's never face to face. It gives you this sense of loneliness and makes you feel very uncomfortable, and you're never really sure if you're actually talking to someone or if you're just imagining it. I really do love Penumbra quite a bit. I played the original trilogy a long time ago when I first had a Let's Play channel, you know, not to copy PewDiePie or whatever. And as much as I'd like to talk about that, I cannot deny that what Amnesia did later was basically perfect what Penumbra tried to execute. See, in Amnesia, you play as someone who has, well, amnesia, duh, but the only thing you know is that your name is Daniel, you apparently wiped your own memory out on purpose, and that you're being hunted by a shadow. Your one and only objective is to go deeper into the castle you woke up in and kill the Baron. With this premise alone, we've already set up the biggest clue behind this game's ingenious design, and that is you cannot trust yourself. It's true, because Amnesia has everything a classic horror game would need: scary monsters, scary traps, spooky environments, a fragile protagonist, all that good jazz. Although it did have that one invisible water monster that was legitimately terrifying. But the other thing that differentiates itself with other horror games is its sanity meter. Now, sanity meters sort of exist in other psychological horror games. Eternal Darkness is the only other game that comes to mind personally when I think of sanity meters. And with that game, whenever your sanity is low, you start to experience bizarre things.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles.
It's really cool, and honestly, maybe I'll talk about Eternal Darkness another time, but the reason I brought that up is because, well, I had never played Amnesia before, so when I actually did play, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago or something, so like what, 8 years after its initial launch? Yeah. Well, when I first played it, I assumed the sanity meter did something that affected your status, because, I mean, Eternal Darkness did, and I love that game. Maybe it made you see weird shit, maybe you got less items, maybe it made you lose health, perhaps even the enemies got to see you or find you easier, perhaps even make you lose health easier, something? Well, I was curious for the longest time just what it could be that the sanity meter did, but it wasn't until after I had beaten the game that I looked it up and found out that this game has a horrible secret. Now, if I tell you this right now, you probably won't like Amnesia the same way as well, people who initially went in blind did. So I would go ahead and play that game, enjoy it yourself, stream it, I don't know, do something with it, because what it does with the sanity meter is insane, and spoiling the secret would probably spoil most of the scares. So this is your last warning before I spoil things, okay? Alright, you ready? This is what the sanity meter does. Here it is. Nothing. Fucking nothing. Even the tips in the loading screen say the sanity meter does something, but it's never clear as to how it does it or what point it does it at. The reality is there's no effect to lowering your sanity at all. There's nothing that happens, and yet somehow this non-existent mechanic that does absolutely nothing at all made players all over think that it did do something, anything. It made players scared by having their fear, whatever it was, come to life. It made players scared of themselves. It weaponized the player's own anxiety and fears and made them think that this does something. Now, to be fair, it doesn't totally not do anything at all. I mean, it does do some things, but they're mostly cosmetic in nature. There's also the fact that the sanity meter makes you fall down on the ground involuntarily and forces you to just start crawling for a few seconds. That in itself is incredibly scary, but again, the entire point is that there is no fail state. There's no death. There's no consequence long terms. It's just sort of small, inconsiderate things that could be really effective if you're in the wrong situation, sure, but not really anything major. One of the most notable effects is making the whole screen warp and loopy, making things disorienting and weird, making you feel like something dreadful is going to happen. Sounds are randomly played, making things creepier. It made you think that something was approaching you, or perhaps you were reaching the end of your life. Yet honestly, that's just the equivalent of someone forcing you to wear beer goggles and playing a random ASMR video on YouTube. It doesn't do anything to affect you at all gameplay wise. This of course changes when you play it on hard mode, which actually does have a consequence, and unfortunately it's really nothing interesting, just death. Yeah. But I guess that's sort of the reason why they did this. In fact, the creator of the game himself actually commented on the effect of death not really being that scary, but being somewhat annoying to the players. Ultimately though, it's that extra dose of anxiety that really made Amnesia so special. It focused on using players' expectations to make them believe something that doesn't exist, which made a lot of them scared. It's a game that taught Friction Games how to make even better games in the future, and it eventually led them to Soma, a game I highly consider one of the greatest psychological horror games of all time. Seriously. I mean, like I said, the monsters are whatever and blah blah blah, but the existential shit, man, you just gotta play the game. The existential shit that happens in Soma is so beautiful. It's nightmare fuel. You should really play it. Anyways, overall, Amnesia is still one of the most iconic horror games out there, and I hope what you learn doesn't diminish that for you. If anything, I think it's incredibly clever and probably works a lot more than I think most people are willing to admit. Well, whether that changed your opinion of the game for you or not, one thing's for certain. Without this game, we never have young PewDiePie's compilations of back when he was super cringy and kind of fucking greasy. And that's something to be thankful for.
Stop! Oh, my leg! Ah!